If wealth is the inevitable outcome of both hard work and enterprise, then every woman in Africa should be a dollar billionaire. The reason they are not has nothing to do with women, but everything to do with men. Because we committed, we promised that would be our sisters' keepers. In the context of work, we are the ones that are supposed to kick down the corporate doors and bring down the proverbial, not glass, but concrete ceiling. Because when your boss wants you to succeed, you will succeed. Therefore, when we think about what CEOs want and what HR can do to bring about the South Africa of Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela's dreams, it helps to pause and acknowledge that all of us collectively have not succeeded in eradicating the legacy of apartheid. That's why today, 60.02 million of us since the last census, which has a 32% undercount. So for all intents and purposes, there's probably 65 million of us. 51% are women, people who don't look like me. And yet the representation in positions of leadership, C-suite I'm talking about, is less than 24%. African women less than 4%. And yet we know that when you put a smartphone in the hands of a woman, not only does the health, nutrition, and education of their own children improve, but of the entire society and community from which they come. The pandemic has taught us many things. One of the things it has taught us is that of the 198 countries that have been infected and affected by this COVID-19, 8 of them dealt better with the pandemic than the rest. And all 8 had women as head of state than those that are led by men. New Zealand and all its 5 million people, Angela Merkel's Germany. If we trust women with our lives and livelihoods, why can't we trust them with small companies called entities? So the work ahead of us, of course, is to pick the best people and put them in the right roles. But until and unless we can be led by women, because I genuinely believe that if the world was led by women, it would be much more peaceful. There will be less wars. We are in the throes of 2 at the moment that are happening concurrently, simultaneously, and in parallel. The intent of us getting these good jobs like male in MLC, it's not in and of itself that we continue to go to the window and get salaries. The intent is that we bestow all of ourselves with the requisite experience so that we can start our own businesses, so that we can pay these salaries. We have to build our own businesses and hire our own children, because it is madness to continue to make babies and then send them to a different neighborhood, for them to go down on their knees and ask somebody else for a job. Mayor was talking about the Bible. I'm a good Catholic boy. So 1 Peter 5 says, a man that can't look after his family is worse than an unbeliever. It is our job to look after our families. Because the Bible says a man is the head of the family, comma, the same way that Christ is the head of the church. Not to bellow instructions, but to ask, to humble oneself, to lead by example. Because if you are in your household, you are the one that says, I'm sorry 7 times a day. You give permission to the rest of the family to feel comfortable to say, I'm sorry. Because you see, cleaning and cooking And washing dishes, it's a basic life skill. It's not a gender role. Let me just end in the interest of time so that we can break it together by just giving you a simple challenge. Let's spoke about the training budget that gets cut by CEOs. We all have been subjected to training ad nauseum. We never graduate. Just to be black, they see you, they just want to train you. The Department of Higher Education and Training, led by Dr. Blaine Nzimande, does a piece of work. 2022 audited figures. They say there's 1.2 million students in the 26 public universities. It will cost 50 billion to educate every single solitary one of them on a fee-free basis. There's this smaller nyana historical debt. They put that figure at 16.5 billion, 9.2 billion of which is irrecoverable. 29 years into democracy, we still have this historical debt. And yet we say these young people are not the future, but current leaders. Because every nation depends on its youth who are heavily invested in tomorrow. Because I am yesterday. 60% of South Africans are 35 years or younger. If we don't invest in them and their well-being, we are not creating a country that will be sustainable in the short term whilst we build this notion called long-term resilience. Because resilience in Africa must surely be much more than the food, water, energy, and access. So what do we do as CEOs, as heads of human capital? Because between those two people, that is the company. Because the company can't be the bricks and mortars. The company that is inappropriately located can move its headquarters. It can't be the products and services that we provide, because those change from time to time. Sony, when it started, it was making toilets. Today it's in the top 5 of the most ICT countries in the world. A company that is short on cash can leverage its position and go to the bank and borrow. But a company that is short on people, it's a dead company. Because there are only 2 types of companies, the quick and the dead. Those that have been hacked and those that don't know that they've been hacked. So if we think seriously about these young people, we look at these companies, and I will, in the interest of time, exclude the 2.5 million small and medium enterprises, because that by definition is survivalist. And I will start with just the 1.5 million companies that have a turnover of 300 million and above, and we call them mid-sized companies. And I will look at the 400 companies that are listed on the Johannesburg Securities Exchange, both on the main board and the Vortex. But in particular, I'll look at the 60 companies that hold securities in the 80 private equity firms. Because all of them have some sort of a corporate social investment. Corporate social investment is not goodwill going to Davidton and building a swimming pool. Like when we create jobs, it's not an act of goodwill. We are creating a market of the future. Because there's a problem when your own employees can't afford the goods and the services that you provide. Henry Ford knew it. He said we need to make cars that our own employees can afford. Because who's going to buy them? 98% of these companies in their CSI programs have 4 focus areas. Every single solitary one of them, at least one of them, has something to do with education. So if we look at these companies in the centerpiece of the pupils of their eyes, and we say to them, they need to put in this historical debt fund no less than 1 million rand. Then we look government and say, it's your mess. You created it in the first place. So you match us rent for rent. You know, not in 29 years of democracy, in 1 year, would have wiped off the entire 16.5 billion of historical debt and liberate these young people and free them from mental health issues, from food insecurity, and period poverty. Because you see, when one steady burns the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom, the world of meaning, the world that cannot be conquered without a persistent crusade. Politicians hate educated blacks because educated blacks make it impossible to be fooled by unscrupulous politicians.
Wow. Wow. Chancellor Mohale. Wow. Creating jobs is creating a market for the future. My goodness me. I'm going to allow at least 5 questions because it's not every day, it's not every occasion that we are graced by the presence of our Chancellor of the University of the Free State. Prof, if you may please indulge us by just taking a couple of questions. I'll give you this mic, I'll then move around with the other one. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof, for those profound and powerful remarks. Just a question is this. He makes a point around the level of stress for the young professionals, mental wellness issues. Since COVID, a big thing that we're dealing with, especially in corporate South Africa. Maybe the question to the floor, to the Prof, is really how do we help our future to navigate the challenges that they face at home, the indebtedness. They come as interns in our organizations. I tell them that, listen, we're not employed. Don't go phone Malume and say, Malume bangqashile, because we're going to be under pressure with black tax. They are seriously under pressure because some of their colleagues or peers are unemployed. To get my point, they're feeling guilty. Some of them, they say, how do we help them? Because they're not like us, guys. They're fragile, emotionally and otherwise. We know them. Thank you.
I said the pandemic has taught us many things. One of the things that it taught us is that when fisher women can go out to sea, they repair their nets. I'll come back to that. But what it has also taught us is that sons learn to be men by looking at the back of the heads of their fathers. Therefore, we need to model the behavior that we want to see. Because my son would want to emulate what I have lived. My daughter would want to marry it. The issue of why they repair their nets when they can't go out fishing. 750 days of national lockdown. None of us can claim to be normal. So we have to repair our nets to make sure that we exercise this thing called self-care. Because you can't give that which you do not have. Right. How do you love somebody else when you don't love yourself? You need to be comfortable at looking at yourself in the mirror, absolutely stark naked, and loving every cubic inch of your body. To allow the other human being to touch that every cubic inch of your body. If there's a part you are not proud of, makahambisa isandla sisuka apha siyehla apha emqolo uthi awu bantu uyabulela taya usukhohlwe this thing that's most important and your mind is somewhere else. What are we doing to repair our own nets? when you eat in your own home in the leafy suburbs of Branston, your mother and father, do they have something to eat? Some of us are not talking to our siblings since the pandemic. For whatever reason, are you the one that's going to pick up the phone and say, may I just come and see you?
That's right.
Because you want to be the bigger person in the room. Let me just end by saying, in our own work environment, some of our colleagues joined us. They've never met their supervisors because everything we did was MS Teams, Zoom, or Skype, maybe WebEx, powered by Cisco. There's something you lose when you talk to a machine. You miss the context, but you don't see the body language, because communication is not only verbal. So when you see these employees that have joined your team for the first time and then they've never met the other 8 team members, you have a choice when you see them for the first time. Of all the things you could possibly say, you can choose to say, I want my operational excellence report. I want my financial sustainability report. But imagine if of all the things that you can choose to be, you choose to be kind. And when you see them for the first time, you say, what do you need? Can I get you something? Because that's what it means to be truly human, so that we can produce better humans that are intricately connected, that will help us to solve some of our intractable problems. Human beings that create holding spaces for others so that they also can participate in the economy. Because the majority of our people don't even reach their full potential. What we're asking for is for them just to reach their potential, not their fullest potential, because we are much more than what we've become.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Prof Mohale. I've got a question here from a person who's in the learning and development space and HR community. What advice would you give us in the learning and development community? And you both, and maybe has spoken largely about training and development, building the culture of the business, where you are sitting with a group of board members, CEOs who don't believe or drive the agenda of transformation, yet it is the biggest agenda in the business deliverables, but it's not being driven. And it seems as if, to some point in time, it's a responsibility of HR, yet it is not. It is the responsibility of the board members, it is the responsibility of the CEOs, but they're not driving it. So us as the HR community who wants to see that transformation happening, where we are sitting in businesses like our kind of business, where we sell babies, where there is no transformation. We don't see that diversity, inclusion of females representative from ESCO, from executive, from senior level managers. How do we drive that agenda? What should we do to engage them, to have those conversations, robust conversations, saying that this is the deliverable of business and this is what we should be driving, and it should be driven.
Wow! That's profound, isn't it? Because transformation is all our job. It's not just the job of HR. It has to look different to break the cycle. And you do that by retaining the core and stimulating growth. The definition of transformation simply says it is a planned and positive process and strategy that is aimed at transforming the socio-economic environment that has excluded individuals from previously disadvantaged groups in order for these individuals to gain access to opportunities, including developmental opportunities based on their suitability. So transformation is not anti-anybody. It's not anti anything. Because equality is not justice. After 370 years of colonialism, 98 years of separate development, 48 years of institutionalized apartheid, what we seek is social justice. That's why we say our constitution is the best in the world. Not because of what is contained in the main body of the 198 chapters of the Constitution. No, because of what is contained in the one page, which we call the preamble. It starts with we, the people. My words, not the politicians. We say it's the best in the world because towards the middle, it implores both you and mandates you and I to rectify these past injustices, not the politicians. We say it's the best in the world because it hangs on three fundamental principles. Number one, it talks about this notion of a constitutional democracy. 2 words. It's like saying the development of managerial leadership, for emphasis. If I had time, I would tell you that when you choose to be a constitutional democracy, you can't do what the Afrikaners did and use 90% of the resources for 10% of the population. Because you chose to be a democracy driven by the Constitution, the supremacy of the Constitution that says we are all equal before the law, the president and the janitor. It's the choice that we made. It wasn't forced on us. The second principle is social justice. The third one is fundamental human rights. Not human rights, fundamental. The United Nations says that 35 of it. Yes, there's freedom of speech, freedom of association. Today, because of the Constitution, you can kiss whoever you want, even of the same gender. It's enshrined and protected in the Constitution. But the one that we don't talk about, because it's less sexy to talk about, is the freedom from hunger. It says so in our Constitution, freedom from hunger. Yet 30 million South Africans live below the poverty datum line. It's defined as 684 rand per month combined household income. 30 million don't meet that. There's 16.5 million of us who are gainfully employed. But to Basar Sikiba, only 7.1 million of us pay tax. People on social security are 19.8 million. When we became free on the 27th of April 1994, there were less than 2 million. We can't pride ourselves that we have added another 17 million. Our job was to ensure that the 2 million that we found there, we give them jobs and they get out. Now we celebrate it as a milestone, as an accomplishment. 46% of women are indigent. Unemployment, on a narrow definition, not the expanded definition, is 36.9%. Youth unemployment is 74.9%. When young people are sitting at home twiddling their thumbs with nothing to do, not only are we asking for trouble, we actively invite it. So what happened in the 2 weeks in July of 2021 is going to happen again and again and again of a failed insurrection, but also of rampant looting. It was a powder keg waiting to explode. Anything would have set it off. So transformation is our job. Because the Constitution says, but why do we want to transform? So that this economy looks like us. It uses big words. It says it must be broadly reflective of the demographics. It must look like us. If we don't succeed on transformation, going on buses and carrying the William Webb trophy and celebrating the one sport that separated us, that now, as God would have it, unites us, will be hollow and meaningless, because it will be a pyrrhic victory and a fake unity. To deepen and widen that, we need to have the second conversation that says, how do we ensure that when we come from Orlando Stadium, the majority of our people don't go back to Soweto, where there's 3.5 million of them. That's more than the people, the whole population of Eswatini, Namibia, Lesotho, and Botswana. Because each of those have a population of 2 million and less. Soweto is bigger than those countries. And yet all of us, when you look at the people that have access to fiber, it's 14.6% of the population. So when you give your people laptops and smartphones and say, go and work from home, you are excluding the other 85%. The majority of them live in 4-roomed houses. So in the pandemic, when you say, no, you must do social distancing, in a 4-roomed house, there's one bedroom, and it belongs to the parents. So you can see that, you see, we're sending our people to go and die. Let me end by saying, you have to love your people to lead them. You don't love your people when you steal through state capture the first 5 years 1.5 trillion South African rands. That's 2/3 of what Edward Gitzvetter collects in a year from companies and us. Every year, we siphon off on average 200 billion rands just to the 2 Zupta families. There's still 3,560 people are treated twice just in Limpopo alone. 29 years into democracy. It must look different to break the cycle. And the cycle we are trying to break is the self-perpetuating, vicious cycle of abject. We want to end the screaming noise of poverty, the violence that is meted against us because of extreme trauma, and we haven't even given ourselves time to deal with this trauma. You must look at the ANC women. They are the most angry people you can ever meet because of the abuse that they suffered when we were in exile. Let me take the third one. How's your time?
One last question.
Make it easy, Mary.
I was not going to ask, but I want to hear, you've been titled a lot. There's one subject we've never really talked about. I wanted to hear your view around this obsession of the scarcity of skills on the continent.
That's not easy. Let me be brief. You see, nobody learns how to swim by reading a textbook. At some stage, you have to dip your big toe in the cold water. Nobody is born with a title managing director, which I was. Nobody is born with a title president, which I was, of business. Somebody believed in you, gave you a chance.
That's right.
They threw you in the deep end, and you said, I'm going to swim or sink. Is the choice you made. When I started, I said, if your boss wants you to succeed, you will succeed.
Yeah.
So when we put black people in positions of leadership and women into positions of leadership, we say, but do they have the technical competence? Do they have the skills? We don't ask that when we put white men into the same positions. So somebody is a medical rep, is a lift mechanic. We promote them on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they come to work to be the supervisor. We don't even ask them to unlearn and learn new skills. They learn on the job. But if you are black and female, unantoni. In fact, in this country, we've done worse. So our Minister of Agriculture in the National Party was Skuman with standard 6. The CEO of Woolworths, Simon Sassman, does not have matric.
Yeah.
He tells a story that when he came back from school, when he was a little picnic, the family would send him to open the boxes with a crowbar. That's how he learned. He became the CEO, now he's called the chairman of Woolworths. The youngest director was John Hall, when it was still called Wooltrue, Woolworths and Truworths and 6 other entities. But when it's time to give an opportunity to a black person, the one you're replacing will not stand at 6. When now they want masters and 10 years experience. So we are really just being disingenuous when we talk about this notion of skills. But here's the one that really riles my back. I hardly ever get angry. When it is black people themselves in a room. I was the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. This organization that was started in 1960 before I was born, for 2 things and 2 things only. To defend apartheid and for sanction busting. So I take an early retirement from Shell at age 55 because my 2 daughters are okay. It looks like they can survive. I agreed to take the job on condition that they allow me to transform this thing and eat it from inside. So I find an exco of 7 people. Only one is a woman. It's a white woman. So I start on Wednesday, the 3rd of July, 2017. On the 1st of November, we have an exco of 5. All 5 of them are black. Only 2 are men, if I include myself. The other one was Temba Maseko, who used to be the CEO of CIS. I picked him to send a strategic conversation to these 89 CEOs that when you choose to be a whistleblower in government, they will want to starve you to death so that you lose your house, your kids must get out of private education. To send a message to the 10,000 others, so you open your big mouth. It's our final. That's why I got him. So now it's time to get to the board. When we're thinking about the board, I say to them, we'll go and ask the late Dr. Jabulani Albert Mabuza to be the chairman of Business Leadership South Africa, 89 CEOs of this country. They thought I was hard. So we'll also ask him to be the president of Business Unity South Africa. That's the apex organization of 67 other organizations, 67 BLSAs. They will also ask him to be the chairman of the CEO initiative, so that at least big business can speak with one voice. They agree. Chairman. And then a black person on this board says, if we have a black chairman, then the CEO must be white. Let me end on, you said it's the last one, right? On something practical, so that I'm not asking you to do something that I myself am not prepared to do. So Google is a wonderful thing. So wherever, and I say this without any fear of retributions or reprisals, wherever I've been personally, finally accountable, I've always left another African. Always. So check Otis Elevators. I was MD there in 1996, just 2 years into democracy. Check Shell Oil Products Africa. And she had to show me peace of justice with all. The head of legal, Kimme Tabile Mulukum. Human capital, Kimme Christine Naidu. The CFO, Kimme Barbara Makuid. But where I wanted to end is I serve on a few boards. I chair 3. The Bidvest Group Limited, ArcelorMittal, the world's biggest steel maker. They run it out of London. And SBV Services, the cash and transit. But I just want to tell you about the Bidvest Group Limited, because today it employs 138,000 people. There's 7 divisions. The 7 divisions, 4 of them are run by women. It has 350 companies. Its CEO is Nompumelelo Tembekile Matisi. Since she's only been in that job for 3 years. If her results in 2022 were better than 2021 in COVID, it would be a miracle. Her results were better than pre-COVID. She declares the biggest dividend in the history of a 38-year-old Bidvest that was founded by Branchoff. In the history. She's the first one to reach the 100 billion revenue mark. It's a listed company. Look after this. Look there. This last financial year, 114.7 billion rands revenue, 11.4 billion trading profit. Wow. She does this. When we appointed her, I was already chair, to be the CEO of the Bidvest Group Limited. She was the only woman on the board. Before we appointed Ndade Kumo Shonian to come and be our non-executive director and serve on our audit and acquisitions committee. Before, Mpumi's board was 80% black and 73% African women.
Wow.
Gentlemen, if I can please ask that you rise your feet and we give Prof Mohale a big round of applause. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You can sit down. Wow, we have truly been blessed, challenged, and at the same time educated. There's so much that we've learned and we have absorbed. Thank you so much, Bess. We love you. Prof Mohale, we should do this again.